you took a bronze medal this morning. This is a quick track today.
It is, and it gets up to speed so quickly. The first 6 corners is really where it's won and lost, and you've got to be so accurate up here, but at the same time, you cannot afford to oversteer. You've got to work out where you need to do the work and where you need to let the sled run and accelerate. And it's not necessarily about being perfect, it's just about finding those accurate moments and then letting the sled run. This here is corner 6, so this is really critical for speed because you're coming from a steep section into this flat section here, and then in this labyrinth it's all about form, connection with the sled, let it accelerate. Hopefully your competitors aren't catching you up at this point, and then by this time, this is corner 11 into 12, you've got a tricky transition here, and then it's all about just trying to maintain that speed through to the finish line and try not to lose it in this last corner. It is very technical down here. You've got a steep downhill into uphill, and if you make a mistake here, because you're travelling uphill, you can lose bags of time.
Across the finish line, the track record set by Sunbin Jung, who was the winner of the last race here in the 2017-2018 season. He, of course, has since retired, but Jung Seung-gui, his teammate, who was in the silver medal position a week ago in Whistler behind Marcus Wyatt and ahead of Matt Weston, is very much a competitor here. Martin Stukus took silver last time out. He is here coaching. Axel Jung took bronze. He is here competing. So there are a few of the last few podium botherers still in our field. So the field is gradually building in number. We welcome our Chinese athletes. We've got a first-time slider from Australia as well. And it's that traditional post-Olympic drop-off where people have surgery that they've kind of needed probably for 2 years but couldn't afford to take before the games, and older athletes retire and younger athletes are coming in and budgets are spent, and so quite a lot of the European teams we don't see here in North America at the start of the season.
That's it. The year following the Olympic Games is always really interesting in our sport because most programs work in 4-year cycles. There's a huge amount of turnover, both in athletes, coaching staff, funding, everything's different. So it's always an interesting year. You see people that maybe missed out on going to the Olympics super motivated to get on that podium for the first time. That's certainly how I felt. I remember that feeling. And so, yeah, there's always a mixture of experience and a bit of naivety and, you know, new athletes coming through.
Well, we talked about the track being super fast this morning. The fastest time in practice yesterday, Yang Wengang of China, 2 seconds faster than the quickest run that was recorded in the last World Cup race 5 years ago. Now, that wasn't a track record run, but still, it looks like we could have a very quick race. And Yan and Yin of China will join Chen at the tail of the field. They make their first World Cup start. Race 2 of the BMW IBSF Men's Skeleton World Cup at a windy Park City, Utah. Kim Ji-soo of Korea, the first man on the ice. Martin Haven and today's bronze medalist in the women's race, Laura Dees, join us. Critical start here, and not much you can do about the wind blowing up the valley to the start.
No, not at all. It's a pretty exposed start, actually, so the wind does really affect you. It's one of those tracks where you really feel the elements at the top. And Ji-soo Kim looks like he's having a decent start to the track here. All the Koreans are great physically, so they've all got good pushers.
High speed on the track is just before you drop down into corner 7, the beginning of Albert's Alley. 132.1 kilometres an hour, 82.1 miles an hour. Head first, chin on the ice. And for reference, the track record 48.50. We'll have to see how close he gets. The fastest 10 women in Heat 1 this morning were all inside the old track record, and ding ding, here we go.
Wow, there it goes.
Well, he was always likely to be one of those who might break it, and 48.33, so only 1700ths inside the track. I mean, that's a big margin. We don't normally see records beaten by more than a few hundreds.
No, it is huge, and I think it's a combination of the fact that we haven't been here for a few years, and also the track is just in great condition. The track crews done an awesome job this week.
Yeah. Well, nice smooth lines as well.
You see him just trying to keep the sled straight there, countering out of 5 because he knows that's such an important corner. And then here down in the low point, it's so easy to lose time here. You see him take a hit on the wall and a little bit of a skid, but anything going uphill just magnifies the time loss there.
All right, nevertheless, first man down, first track record. Next up, Alexander Schlittner of Austria. Only his 6th ever World Cup start. The 24-year-old has raced here, though, in North America's Cup and Intercontinental Cup, so he's got a bit of experience. There are athletes here who have never seen the track, and there were certainly in the women's race this morning, who had never been here before. It's not as intimidating as Whistler, but like everywhere else, you've got to know where you're going.
Absolutely, it has its challenges. It's a very different track from Whistler, so the transition from there to here as well is quite tricky.
4:73 for Alex.
Nice start. They're looking really relaxed on the sled, actually, and then just trying to get this critical area of 3 to 4 right. You've really got to carry your start speed as far as you can down the track, trying not to make any errors in this section.
See, he steers with his elbows a lot. You don't see that so much. Everybody tries to keep their arms clamped to their side.
Absolutely. I think ideal form, you really want to be tucked in and straight as an arrow, but everyone's driving style is really different as well. So, some of it is about what you're comfortable with and how your sled responds to.
And to a degree, occasionally, if you don't load exactly where you need to be on the sled, you're kind of stuck. You can't get off and try again. Yeah,
or if you take a really hard hit, you get repositioned on the sled and then you're stuck in the wrong position. That can be really unnerving as an athlete as well.
So he comes across the line, 48.84. Again, empirically, only a third of a second off the all-time track record as it was 5 minutes ago. So that's pretty decent. But, as you said, Olympic cycle's a 4-year cycle. We haven't been here for 5 years, so we came here 2 years before Pyeongchang. I mean, there's a whole different field then.
That's it. The field has completely changed since the last time we were here. It's quite incredible. I think actually the athletes that were on the ICC circuit last year might have more experience than a lot of the World Cup athletes, because they did actually visit this track pre-Olympics.
Yeah. ICC and NAC, if you've been doing those, the junior tiers of sliding, you probably get much more experience. Only 4 athletes in this field were in the last World Cup race in 2017. And Kim Ji-soo was one of those. Axel Jung, Christopher Groothair, Vladislav Heriskevich. You might not have picked him out as being in the World Cup 5 years ago, but that was his debut season. Andrew Blaser was not a World Cup slider then, but the US team used this track a lot. This is home ground for him, very much home ground for him. He spent a lot of his life living here. 13th World Cup start for him.
I believe he first slid here in 2012 when he took his on the sled, so yeah, this is definitely home ice for him, and he'll be wanting a good result today. Lots
of good results as well in North America's Cup and ICC. 5 medals, including 2 wins. So let's see what Blaser can produce here. Won't be the fastest start, but 4:79. Let's see what the slide looks like.
If anyone knows how to get speed out of this track, it's going to be him. I'm hoping he's going to show me a masterclass. Looking really good so far.
The form into turn 4, exemplary.
Absolutely, and aerodynamics is such an important part of our sport as well. You really can't get away with sloppy form on the sled at this top level. And it's looking really smooth and nice.
And sometimes that's because he's just driving really well. Sometimes that's because he's got a little more control in the sled, maybe than is ideal. He's still hovering around 3/10 behind. Hasn't caught Alexander Schlintner yet. The mistake between 14 and 15. It's going to be about half a second behind. Oh, 3600s. He held on there. He was 3200s halfway down the track behind. So 48.69.
You can see he did a really good job through the middle section of the track to build that speed, and then he did make the mistake down at the bottom at the low point, but still holding on in there for a good time.
Eric Benotas, you saw in the coach's box a moment or two ago. He's happy with that run.
And he's had success at this track over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking really relaxed there. That's a really tough part of the track there between 10 and 11, because you're going over a hump, so you get negative Gs, and it's really difficult to stay in position on the sled. It's harder than it looks. And just see him have a little bit too much late height in 14 there and just brush the wall. And this is where you start to go steeply uphill, so any mistake you make here is just magnified.
Yeah, representing the hometown as well for Kendall Westenberg, and of course it was for the late great Stephen Holcomb. Well, talking about the wind, if you don't get out of your gear and hang on to it, you'll lose it at the top of the track. We've just seen Andrew Blaser from the USA in his 13th World Cup. This is Austin Florian, his teammate, 29th World Cup. Only raced here twice in NAC in January and December 2017. So his experience no more recent than any of the World Cup sliders around him.
Exactly, and I was talking to Kendall Westenberg of the USA earlier, and she was saying that actually in the US athletes haven't visited this track as much as you might think over the past few years. Great start there from Austin, and let's see if he can keep this acceleration building down the track a little bit early onto 3, and that's going to push him late into 4, as you see there. Hopefully he can correct in the corner.
Yeah, quite a lot of time. The only time they see this track is in team trials pre-season. Spent a little more time here this year because Lake Placid wasn't open as early as it normally is. Austin in the red, but only 900s behind the current leader, Kim Ji-soo. This could be a really big run for Austin, Florian.
Yeah, it's looking really good. If he can just keep it smooth between here and the finish line, then hopefully he's going to minimise that damage, or even possibly re-accelerate, because Ji-soo made a mistake at the bottom.
Let's look at the wind blowing away. 900s back, 48.42. That's a pretty decent run. That's the second fastest so far.
That was a nice looking run. Hopefully he'll be pretty happy with that. And there's always something to build on for run 2 as well. You never have the perfect run, so there's always something to think about. Go back and try and do better.
He hasn't had a chance to race in World Cup here, Austin. His 2 World Cup best scores are both a 9th place finish. He could improve on that here.
Just a little bit unsettled there. I think he had a really early entrance onto 5, which knocked the sled down, and he managed it really well. And again, just going over that hump there where you don't really have any pressure in the sled. There's no pressure on the runners there, so if you make a move, you can really easily unbalance the sled.
Good run.
He looks pretty
Hi,
happy
Mom,
with
Dad,
that.
Erica, everyone at home. Thanks for watching.
Puffing and blowing. 2,000 metres of altitude is not to be sneezed at, is it? You really feel it here.
It is not easy. Warming up this morning, I could really feel it.
I know. Well, walking up with the sled, with the bag from the truck to the start.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that was a workout.
Next up, Matt Weston from Great Britain has not raced here before.
This is Matt's first visit to this track, so...
Well, you know, you have that at every track. You don't normally have that when you get to the World Cup level. Normally you've sort of experienced most of them at the junior levels, but he hasn't had that opportunity. So a total of 6 trips down. Now, you know, that was the same for Hannah Neiser, for Suzanne Crayer in the women's race, but it's not much information going into the databanks.
No, exactly. And, oh no, he's just come out
he's
the spur
broken
there.
the line.
No.
Oh.
Oh, Matt. He's going to be devastated by that. He had such a good week last week and was coming in off the back of so much confidence. That's just really unfortunate.
And he tried to stop there before the sled broke the beam, because if you do, you can actually go back to the block. If you haven't broken the start beam, you can start again. But yeah,
it looked like he'd just gone over the red line before we had a chance to stop the sled, and so at that point you've got no choice but to keep running. This is such a shame for Matt. He's had a really good training week. He's, as you said, only 6 runs. He's never been here before, so he'll be banking on this experience for next time. But Matt is so competitive, he's going to be devastated by that.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of his key strengths, like Marcus, like you, is that he's got a great start. And, yeah, you take that away. Still, look at the speed.
I know,
look at the speed.
Still generated such great speed there.
And that's the funny thing, you know, about these tracks, is you are still falling, even though you don't start fast. By the time, you know, you're getting to near terminal velocity, you know, what was the start? A 6 second, and that's just when he, you know, crossed the 50-meter beam. I mean, he was still wrestling himself onto the sled.
Yeah, that's so impressive to have still generated that speed, bearing in mind he basically didn't have any velocity at the top. You see here, he just had to make a decision there whether to go back or to carry on.
Look at the red line on the wall, and yeah.
I think he just calculated there that he wasn't going to be able to stop and bring himself back before the red line, and possibly the wind playing a part there.
Yeah.
The conditions at the top have been really difficult this morning.
I have to say, I don't think I have seen a more uncomfortable skeleton load in 20 years of watching this. I think, you know, we've seen sleds pop the groove, we've seen athletes miss the sled and load uncomfortably. That was the nightmare of all nightmares.
That is literally every athlete's nightmare.
It is. All compiled into one.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is he'll wake up tomorrow and it won't have happened. Next up is Axel Junk, bronze medalist on this track, the last 2 races, in fact the only 2 races he's done here. And Axel in really good form this season, started the season fit. I mean, started the season. Last year he did 1 World Cup race. in the whole year.
Axel's super experienced, so he'll have a few more runs on this track than other people. Looking quite high in 6th there, and just trying to manage the sled without overworking it, but it looks like he took a hit going into that flat section, which is pretty detrimental for your speed. So let's see if he can hold this to the finish line. Oh, a bit wild there. That's a big hit going in, and I'm wondering just how much the loose snow in the track from the wind is affecting people here.
Yeah, could be, but I mean, this is Kristen Bromley style wild ride. Legs all over the place, but still big speed until he got down between 14 and 15, and that's, you know, that big skid there again, that uphill section. You know, if you think about it, if you're riding a bicycle, if you're going quickly downhill but you don't pedal as you start to get to the incline, you know how quickly you lose speed, and this is no different.
That's it, and interestingly with this track you actually hit your max speed at corner 6, so you're doing some deceleration and then hopefully re-accelerating towards the finish line again.
His max speed, by the way, at corner 6, 82.9 miles an hour. Look at the height here.
Pretty impressive. He just had too much height, and then he knew he was in the wrong place and tried to correct, but he just didn't have time in that transition. This track comes at you so quickly, and then you see again there, he's just out of rhythm by this point. And unfortunately, the problems here just compound. You know, when you're travelling at 80 miles per hour, you don't always have time to get the sled back online between runs.
No, absolutely. Well, he had an even worse transition there than Jane Channel did, and she had the full scorpion foot over the back touching the ice moment going, but he was very nearly off the sled. So big moment for Axel Jung. He finished 3rd here last time out. 4th, just off the podium, was Christopher Grotehair, our Olympic champion and 2-time world champion. So Grotehair with 2 World Cup wins, 2 World Championships and an Olympic gold.
He certainly is a big-time performer. You can't deny that.
Is, isn't he?
And he is in great form at the moment. I'm expecting to see a great drive from him. You can see a little bit of snow accumulation in the track there now, so it's definitely starting to build up a little bit.
I think the bobsled fraternity will be looking at the track with envious eyes, because I think the forecast is that there's going to be more than a little bit of snow tomorrow. 900s off the lead.
Looking really relaxed through corner 6 there. A little bit high possibly in 7. He might have to just wrestle the sled back online through this flat labyrinth section, and then coming over that hump into 11, looking really smooth, calm and collected.
Joint top speed, same as Axel Jung, but a cleaner exit. Now he's spearing away from Kim Ji-soo of Korea. 700s.
This is a lovely looking run, and he's handled that exit of 14 so well compared to what we've seen so far, and that's worth a lot. You can see it there in that track record. Wow, what a time.
1900s quicker than Kim. So the track record has gone down from 48.50 to 48.14. That's a 10th per year.
That's a huge margin, isn't it?
Well, you know, athletes get faster, but, you know, it was Jung, it was Ducours. I mean, these guys were matching them at the time. So it's partly sled, it's a tiny bit athlete. Mostly the track has never been quicker, ever, ever, ever.
No, and you can see there from that shot just how shiny the ice is, and we've had some really cold temperatures actually through training this week, so I think that's helped keep the ice quality really good, even with this snow sitting on top now. Yeah,
2 nights ago going to dinner, it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit. We had to Google what that meant. That meant minus 16 at 7 p.m.
That's officially cold, isn't it?
It's a dry cold. Yeah. That's what they tell you, it's minus 27 here. Yeah, but it's a dry cold, Martin. Shut up, it's a cold cold.
Still cold.
Yeah, enough of you dry. That's why everybody's got cracked lips. Now then, the cage tiger of all cage tigers, Felix Kaisinger. This man is just a bundle of electric energy, isn't he? One of the fastest starters in the business, but always ends up being super over tight and over driving in the first heat.
Yeah, he's got so much to offer as an athlete, and sometimes he just overcooks it. It's such a difficult balance in this sport, and that's a great start with 4:59. Yeah. But you're trying to balance that adrenaline that you need for an excellent push with the zen and the calm for a great run, and just a little mistake there. And again, I wonder if he was just a little bit too amped up for the start, because it was such a good start time.
Huge start time, a 10th ahead. He had 1100s from the start, but only the 7th best speed. He's trying to contain his form, he's trying to contain the speed, but it just sort of seems that he's just a bit tight.
And I think that's probably that error 3 to 4 you saw him there, just carrying through that flat section.
Now, if he can stay clean here, just takes a tiny tap. This could be a top 3 run. Is he going to be second ahead of Kim Ji-soo? No. 2600s back, 200s ahead of Austin Florian of the USA, who had still been lurking in 3rd place. So that's going to be an entertaining battle.
He's got a lot to make up on the second run. There's a few errors in there. So to be in 3rd position when you've got that much to clean up isn't all bad.
Look at him, he's just going, ah!
Yeah.
And he knows it, you know, and we were talking about this in Koenigsegg a couple of years ago, and he said, yeah, my grandfather said to me, Felix, why don't you just do 2 second runs?
If only it were that easy, hey?
I know.
Yeah, that's the error there that I mentioned earlier, just affected his velocity a little bit going into corner 4. And he obviously felt he was a little bit high there in that second pressure in 14 because you saw him drop a toe, and you can see the result there, that he's late off the corner and skidding uphill. We haven't seen many people get that section right today.
No, and when they do, you know, if you come straight down the tubes in the middle, it's very evident, isn't it? You've really got it right. So then, one of only 4 men who was in the race in 2017 in the World Cup, who is still competing, Vladislav Heraskevich. 4 athletes that were competing are coaching here. Martin Stukas and Matthias Guggenberger, who are coaching the Brits. Matt Antoine for the USA, and Joe Cecchini, who is coaching just about everybody on the planet. So they were all in the race at that time.
If I remember rightly, Vlad had an incredible second run the last time he was here and pulled up a huge number of spots. So hopefully he's taken that confidence into this heat today, even though it's been a while.
It was his 2nd ever World Cup start. We started in Lake Placid and he was like 8th or something in the first heat. And we were going, oh my goodness, who is this kid? Yeah, he kind of appeared on the scene and started to have really good results straight away, and everyone was sat up and took notice. And he's a great driver. You can see this here. He's navigating the track really well. If we looked at him 5 years ago, his body shape now, you know, he came from big power strength, you know, mixed martial arts and powerlifting. His father was a strong man. Now he has got a real runner's physique. I mean, he's still got the broad shoulders, but he's very trim.
Absolutely, and quite a few athletes in the field we've all had to deal with a weight limit coming in, which for some athletes that's been harder to deal with, and others having to drop quite a lot of weight. This is a decent looking run from Vlad.
Good speed at the bottom. 6600s back, 48.80. There's his father, Mikhail.
Quite a dramatic dismount there onto the mats. It's so hard to control your sled there in the outrun because it's so flat, and you're still travelling pretty fast when you hit those mats.
40th World Cup start here. Last time we were here was his 2nd. That's how much of his career has been held in the interim.
Yeah, a big difference in experience from the last time he was here for sure. You see how relaxed he is on the sled there, just really trusting it and letting it run. He spotted his entrance. He knows he's in the right place.
And that is the key thing for him. He really trusts the steers, and you know, 9 times out of 10, you're spot on. Occasionally, it just goes a bit wrong. There's Andrew Blaser at the top, looking pretty excited with life. So we saw Jackie Narracott leaning over the barriers there a moment or two ago. Well, the race being led by Christopher Groothair from Kim Ji-soo and Felix Kaisinger. And right now, Jung Seung-gui of Korea, the 23-year-old, in his 20th World Cup start. Same as Felix Kaisinger. 8 North America's Cup races and 2 Intercontinental Cup races here for the Korean slider, including silver last week. It's been a good start to the season for Jung.
For sure, and he should be feeling quite comfortable here because I believe that the Koreans do more sliding in North America than they do in Europe early in their career, so this is not home ice, but he should feel relatively comfortable here, and you can see already he's building some really good speed and looking very relaxed on the sled. That's a lovely transition to 5. Let's get into 6. That's going to scrub speed a little bit.
But look at the pace, 1500s up from 10th in front at the start. Is he still in front? 3rd best speed. Not bad.
A little close to the wall there, but again, he should know how to correct that.
Still got the lead over Christopher Groothair.
This is a very nice looking slide. If he can just keep it together between now and the finish line. Small tap on the wall there, but that shouldn't cost him too much if he can keep the runner straight.
Is he going to be ahead of Kim? He is. 400s off the lead. Jeff Payne looking very happy with that on the right-hand side. I'm sure that Jung will be as well. And actually their former coach, Richard Bromley, is here this weekend, working with other nations. he'll be watching with great interest how these two Korean sliders go. It's been really a big part in their development.
Absolutely, and as we said at the start, you always have coaches moving around, changing nations, and so this first year of the new Olympic cycle, you're always going to see some of that, new coach-athlete relationship still being built.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Payne, so much experience in his sliding career, and you see his reaction to that one mistake, that one big skid that denied Jung the lead.
Yeah, he knows there's more in the tank there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So next up, one of the youngest men in the field, 21 years old, Blake Enzie. 5th World Cup race for him. But he's been here a bit as well, as you might expect from a Canadian. 6 NAC and 2 ICC races here. Finished in 6th place at home in Whistler. You can see the cornfields of Alberta and the blue skies overhead on his helmet. Lots of noise at the start from his teammates.
Just adjusting a little bit into corner 1 there. He knows exactly where he wants to go in. Corner 2 to 3 is actually one of the trickiest parts of the track to get right, and compounded by the fact that it's so important as well. There's a lot of pressure in those first few corners to keep the sled running in the right direction.
A bit like Segul, the 2 to 3 is live or die. If you get them wrong, you just park.
Absolutely, you might as well get off at that point.
Francesco Frugic said that. He said we should have an off-ramp before turn 4 for when you've made a mess of 2 and 3.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. He's putting together a really nice looking run here. A little bit late into 13 and a bit of a skid, but
should be hanging around with Vladislav Heraskevich. This is going to be bottom of the top 10 though for Blake Enzie. Not using the advantage the way he'd like to. There's Joe Cicchini.
Blake will know that he's got some things to work on from that run, and hopefully he can do that in run 2.
John Channel helping with the sled. I was talking to Joe yesterday, so it's minus 15, and he said, yeah, it's minus 25 in Calgary, I'll take this, this is warm.
It's warm here. Everything's relative.
Yeah, the plains of Alberta don't offer much shelter, I don't think.
Great last step there as he gets onto the sled. You can see him adjusting slightly with his toe there.
Yeah, he's really come along in a hurry, this young man as well. 3 World Cups, Olympic Games. I mean, that's, talk about in off the high board.
Absolutely, and that happens with some athletes depending on the trajectory of their progress.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened to Matt Weston. He's still learning tracks for the first time on, but he's doing it on World Cup because he progressed so quickly in his first couple of seasons.
10 down, 9 to go. First of 2 heats of the Men's Skeleton World Cup in Park City. And the yellow vest adorns the chest of Marcus Wyatt, our World Cup points leader, winner in Whistler.
Isn't that a lovely sight?
It is, it is. Actually, it was a nice little thing where they handed Martin Stukos the last ever World Cup leader's vest, because he was last year's world champion, but he's coaching this year. But they made a little presentation. Check out that social media. Let's take a look at this. The Billy Whiz legs of Marcus Wyatt. It's a clean start, 4.57.
Huge push there from Marcus.
Yeah, because he's not up for it at all, having won gold in Whistler last week, is he?
Not at all. No, Marcus is super competitive and so motivated, and it was great to see British success last week. Quite high there in corner 6. Looks like he just about got away with it going into the flat section.
I always think, because he's got quite decent height, I always think he's really good at maintaining his aerodynamic form as well.
He does. He has great form on the sled, and he actually comes from a background in American football, which maybe isn't the most obvious transfer into skeleton, but then not many of them are, let's face it.
Yeah, more bobsledders come from football. Late flop. I've hardly seen anybody with a flop there. Top 4 run, top 3 run, at the line, 4th place just. So 21 hundredths out of the leader's box. What was your gap to the lead in the first heat?
Oh, I can't. 3 tenths?
Yeah, 29 hundredths.
Like
yeah. So, Marcus Wyatt, definitely in there swinging. Yeah, Laura was one of 5 athletes covered by 1700s, going from 3rd down to 7th.
Absolutely, it's always really close. It's a short track, so that's why the downtimes are low, and the gaps between athletes are always really small. You can see how much velocity Marcus is putting into the sled there.
And yelling him off the top, Martin Stukos, the winner here in 2010, 2013 and 2016.
A little bit of a skid going into 11 there, so Marcus will know that he can fix that on run 2.
I was going to say there was a year when Mark Martins wasn't on the podium, but
surely not.
Can't find it. Those are very few and far between at any track. So Christopher Grother, the Olympic champion, still leading here as we get to Florian Auer of Austria. The 28-year-old has never raced here before. 42 World Cups, nil here. So this is, like for Matt Weston, like for a couple of the others, a real voyage of discovery where you have 2 days, 3 training runs and a race.
And it is tough to do that, to come and do 2 training runs and then get into that race mindset, even though you don't feel like you know everything that you want to know about the track.
And the other thing, of course, is that you're not giving it 100% full beans off the start when you're trying to learn the track, particularly on day 1. So race day, the ice has changed, your start is faster, so everything's different.
That's it, and you do know that subconsciously going into the race that the top section of the track is going to change because you'll be carrying that additional start speed. A little bit high in corner 6 there. I think he took a tap going to 7, which isn't great for speed because you're going into that flat section. It's a little bit skiddy. Corrected nicely through corner 11 though. That was a lovely entrance into 12. Looks like he's got the run back online. Again taking a touchdown in that low point, but he managed to keep the runners going forward, so hopefully that won't cost him too much.
Across the line in 12th place, 49.20. So 1.06 seconds away from the lead for Florian Auer.
He doesn't look too happy. He was shaking his head there.
Well, you know, I mean, even when the cameras don't catch it, you will still get to the bottom after a medal-winning run with half a dozen things in your head going, that could have gone better, that could have gone better.
Absolutely, and that's this sport. You know, you can win a race and still know you made mistakes, or, you know, there's no such thing as the perfect run. So you're always looking to make those small improvements. And I think that's why people have such long careers in this sport, is that you never quite reach that perfection. There's always something still to learn.
Well, here in the low point between 14 and 15, just a little touch on the wall. There's a few too many skids creeping in. And it's that balance between having enough contact from the runners to have control and having too much, which is drag that slows you down. And it's always a bit of a guess.
And that's what you're trying to work out in training as well, is how much grip do you really need, and, you know, how different is it going to be on race day? It's always a gamble. Always
a gamble. Now then, Evan Neufeld from Saskatchewan, 35 years of age, 12th World Cup. He's had 1 full World Cup season, and then the odd occasional ride, but earned a spot in the World Cup this year. He's got the map of Saskatchewan on the belly pan of the sled. 4.76, yeah.
It's not a bad start there from Evan. He's just going to try and accelerate as best as he can through this section. He's a little bit early onto 3 there, and so you can see he was hugging the wall going into 4, and that's going to make 4 slightly tricky. Yeah, you could see that problem compounded there on the exit of 4, and now he's trying to wrestle it back online into the flat section through 7, which he's done a pretty good job of there.
Doesn't have much history here. Raced in NAC in 2013, which is a long while ago.
Yeah, he's just slightly high there. He had a late entrance into 12 and that pushed all the height to the end. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. Yeah, you can see late off the corner, and then he's just wrestling to try and get that sled to go in a straight line up the hill when you really don't want it to be skidding.
Kind of a little like Florian Auer, and very similar in terms of where he ends up. 13th place, but 1.37 off. Well, as Jane Channel said, that's racing. Sometimes you're the fly and sometimes you're the windshield, and he'll be looking for some redemption in the second heat, I think.
I didn't learn anything.
Okay.
That's the saying, is it? You either win or you learn. So hopefully when you don't win, you learn something.
I didn't learn anything. Well, you know, and that presumably is, I made all the mistakes I made in training again in the race, and you try and iron out at least some of them. So
you hope that doesn't happen, but sometimes you just don't have time to nail the track down.
He still has the standing backflip. Okay, 1 down, 1 to go. It is such a mental game. This, you know, yes, the equipment, yes, the push, yes, it's all in the head, isn't it? It's leaving that behind you, and the same with Matt's start, and still giving it 100% the next time at the block. So what about the third of our Brits, Lawrence Bostock? Now, he didn't have the greatest day in Whistler a week ago. Let's see if he can turn his form around a little.
Yeah, Lawrence is still learning the ropes of World Cup.
And like Matt, never here before either.
No, he's looking to gain experience, take as much as he can from this week. Saw a bit of wind coming across the start there, so probably not very helpful.
464 again, good strong start.
Yeah, decent start as you'd expect. And just fighting through the snow at the moment.
Some Hollywood effects blowing the snow down in front of him like he's Thor the God of Thunder or something.
Yeah.
Clearing the track for him. 100th away from the lead. I tell you what, this might be the slide that he needs to try and, is that the curse of the commentator, trying to get his head around this track. 8th best speed, a top 10 run here will go a long way to confidence building.
And he's making a couple of small errors, but for someone that's never seen this track before this week, he's really not doing badly. Same late height that a lot of people are getting there in 14. That's nothing new or different.
10th place at the line, 11th place at the line. How
close.
far out of 10th? 300s out of the top 10. Yeah, no wonder Gugi's looking happy with that. As you say, you know, I mean, 6 training runs, that's his 7th time ever down this ice. Not his 7th race, his 7th trip down. So you've got to be happy with that.
Absolutely, and you saw he carried some really good speed from the top through to that middle section, so hopefully he can take take confidence from that into Heat 2.
It probably is gusty, isn't it?
It really is, and it's inconsistent as well, so you never know when it's going to come at you.
I mean, your medal ceremony, it was almost blowing the whole of the roof off the finish dock.
So we're holding everything down.
Yeah, I know, including the athletes.
You can see that brush on the wall there, just as there's no pressure in the runners, makes it difficult to keep the sled in the straight line, but he did a really good job there.
Yep.
Windy.
Didn't panic, didn't oversteer, just, yeah.
No, exactly.
Let it fly. There's been a degree of let it fly. I mean, it is sort of a gliding track, but Christopher Grotehair still the narrow leader from Jung Singui and Kim Ji-soo. Well, we haven't had a Korean winner since the last time we were here, actually, Sun Bin Young. But we have a first-time slider, Peter Macready's from Brisbane in Queensland, 31 years old last Thursday. 11 North America's Cup starts here, so what a place to make your debut.
Yeah, that's got to feel good to have some experience going into this debut race. Nice looking lines at the top here so far. You can tell he knows where he wants the sled to be.
Yeah, he's been spending the last decade or so in the junior categories, North America's Cup, Europe Cup a little bit, but predominantly sliding here in North America. Former kart racer in his youth, so that's all about racing line.
That's the adrenaline then.
Yep.
A little brush on the wall going into 12, but he's corrected it well there.
It was a disastrous morning for his teammate Jackie Narracott. First leg was all over the ice. His is looking a little bit more controlled.
So you see him dipping for the line there, trying to find that shortest route possible uphill.
49.96 for Peter Macready's as he makes his World Cup debut.
You can see Jackie there in the leader's box,
Yeah.
giving him a good cheer. And Jane Janelle helping at the bottom. It's really nice. It's such a family in Skeleton. Everyone helps everyone out.
Yeah, especially, you know, everybody knows who's on their own and who are in tiny teams. A little over-rotation as he was loading there.
Yeah, possibly he didn't look completely comfortable as he got on the sled there. And you can see a bit of late height in 5 and how that just unbalanced the sled. So now going into corner 6, he's got to work out what to do with that sled angle that he doesn't want. Lots of height there in 13 and takes the hit on the wall going into 14.
Well, you know, this is a track that's familiar for him, but the environment isn't, if it makes sense. You know, headshots yesterday, cameras, lights, people in your face, all of that stuff. None of that happens at the junior level. So it's a little bit of a disorientating experience. And another great-looking helmet on a Chinese athlete, Chen Wenhao, 26 on Tuesday. 6th World Cup start for him. Raced here in the North America's Cup in 2016-2017. Patrick Singleton, former Canadian skeleton slider, of the previous generation, the kind who would have raced against the likes of Andy Schmidt, for instance. One of those who was the forerunners before the sport, just as the sport was coming into Olympic favour here. 4:64 for Chen, that's a very good start.
That is a great start, and he's been having some brilliant runs in training, so it's going to be really interesting to see what he can produce here on race day.
Yeah, all three Chinese sliders were quick.
A little bit high there on the exit of 6, but he manages it well.
Still leading the Olympic champion, or was.
Drifting late now into 11. He's got to work out how to fix that in the corner, which he does.
Speed's gone away. I need to have a chat with Willie Schneider and see what's going on with their sled development.
See how high he was in the exit of 14 there. He clearly doesn't quite have the control that he probably wants.
Oh!
That was a dramatic dive for the line.
There was a lot of him coming over that hill in sight, wasn't there? We had that last week. Was it in the women's race? I can't remember. Somebody was like head on one wall and toes on the other, and you rarely see a skeleton sled getting so completely broadside, but there was a lot of him on show coming up that hill.
Absolutely, and I think that's a result of him just wanting to run the shortest possible line into the finish.
I didn't know there was an Austrian shortcut here. I thought there was only Innsbruck.
Oh, there is a shortcut.
Again, uncomfortable load there, and you can see, look, his hips are one side and he's just not quite square.
You can see how much height he has there on that's the exit of 13, and you don't have much time here. You can see his sled is skidding sideways, and he's got to try and work out how to get that back online.
All right. Well, these guys are progressing in leaps and bounds over the last couple of seasons. As is their English, by the way. They're all really chatty when they came in for headshots. Yin Cheng, another 26-year-old. This is his third ever World Cup race. Has had a couple of NAC races here. He raced in Sigulda in February 2020 and December 2021. So this is only the second track he's started a World Cup on. 5th in the Winter Games in Beijing in February, his last race. And another big start.
Yeah, that's a big start. I'm just admiring the helmet design as well as he got down into the sled. It's really beautiful. That's a nice line through 3. Looking really relaxed into 4 there, letting the sled run. This is lovely down into 6.
Well, the confidence of big performances in a home games, you know, which whoever gets to do that, and then plenty of time off to try and get their head around it, seems to be working well for all the Chinese sliders.
That's it. I don't think you'll ever have more pressure than a home Olympics. So, you know, to know that you've handled that and then come into this season with, you know, fresh challenges in front of you, it's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's just letting this run get away from him a little bit.
Yeah, speed's dropped at the bottom. I wonder how much the track is holding up. I mean, it held up very well in the second heat. It didn't seem as quick, and maybe that's a factor of the wind, but I wonder how much it is holding up. It's still got a big glossy sheen, even here, though, in the finish dock. So
yeah, you can see the ice is still hard underneath the snow, but there is some drifting snow here and there, and I think possibly it might be affecting sliders a tiny bit. Great start here. You can see that changeover and the amount of velocity he was putting into the sled through that last stride. That was a really good example of what you want a push to look like.
Again, look at the dragon design, the eyes on the helmet. Really, it's a great looking livery. All these Chinese sliders have got on their helmets. Obviously, the Federation has gone, OK, well, we're going to put a little bit more into you now that you've done so well for your nation at home.
Yeah, it's beautiful design.
And our final slider on ice, our 19th in the race, is Yan Wengang, 25 years of age, 19th World Cup race. The key stat in his career, though, Olympic bronze medal, which, Laura, is one thing, but imagine if instead of doing it in Beijing, you'd somehow been able to do it in London. I mean, the sense of having done something even more special than, quote, an Olympic medal. I mean, to do it in front of a a nation of 1.7 billion people, astonishing.
That's it, what an achievement. And to withstand the pressure of that home games
grief,
as well,
yes.
to perform when it really matters. You see him just battling the elements here a little bit.
And all of the COVIDness, and I mean, just everything, the craziness of the whole thing.
It really was a very unique experience, and I imagine even more so for the home athletes. It was certainly a very different Olympic experience for me.
And you think, you know, Yun in Korea is one thing, but that was sort of, quote, normal. This games must have just been otherworldly for them, as it was for everybody, I think.
Absolutely, it was on such a huge scale, so as I said, to withstand that pressure and perform at your best when it really matters, that must give him so much confidence. A couple of errors creeping in at the bottom of the track here, but not a bad looking run.
Well, again, half a dozen races here, a couple of North America's Cup weekends, one in the Intercontinental Cup when he was still in the development phase. But Yan Wengang finishes in the top 10. And still only 25 years old, should still be very much a front runner when we get to Milan Cortina in 2026. Again, the win really not helping with the start.
Absolutely, he's definitely one to watch for the future. It looked like he got a little bit off balance possibly there before getting on the sled, but he managed it well.
I was talking to some of the coaches at the start, and I was talking particularly to Eric Benotis and Matt Antoine, and I said, you know, what's the wind like? And Matt actually said, sometimes when you're loading, it can blow you, especially with the crosswind, can blow you, you know, across the sled too far.
Absolutely, and possibly that's what happened there. You did see a big gust of wind. Yeah.
Nevertheless, Yan Wengang down happily and comfortably, and he is in 10th place. But our Olympic champion is the race leader. Could Christopher Gronehair now bring his tally of World Cup wins up to match his tally of Olympic and World Championship gold medals?
See what happens.
Yeah, potential for a third World Cup win. It's definitely well placed. The last German to win on this track was... I don't know. Haven't had a German winner on this track in 17 years. So whether we had one post-Olympics or not, there's a little gap in my knowledge between 2002 2006. But Gronehair leads from Jung Sung-gui and Kim Ji-soo. We could have a Korean winner. Marcus Wyatt not out of it. And again, as with you, third down to, okay, well, possibly even Chen in 7th place. That's where potentially a bronze medal is going to come from. Maybe a silver, who knows? Depends what happens. And for Matt Weston, okay, he's going to be looking for redemption exactly the same as we saw from Jane Channel of Canada after the first heat. Peter McCready's welcome to the World Cup. Well, an entertaining and for some disastrous first heat of the second race of the Men's Skeleton World Cup. We will be back with the second heat at... read it from here, it's too far away. I can put a piece of paper on the wall at 15:15 local, so 3:15 local, 7:15 Eastern, which is 22:15 GMT. We'll see you then, an hour from now. Bye-bye.